Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live stream. We are pleased to be presenting music live stream today by Bach. We are pleased to be presenting music live stream today played for us by our Concertmaster Kirsten Yon, presenting music live stream by Jackson Guillén, Concertmaster Kirsten Yon, presenting music live stream by Jackson Guillén, Concertmaster Kirsten Yon, presenting time to time over the past couple of seasons, assistant concertmaster as well, and good. Important friend of the Shreveport Symphonies. So this is not an official Shreveport Symphony event exactly. It's just a little bit before our real, I guess, the beginning of the season happens next week when we have a couple of outdoor programs, a family concert and a Noel Foundation Chamber Music concert. But we are very happy to be able to share some really lovely music here on a Sunday afternoon in advance of the official beginning of our season. So let me just first of all say welcome to both Kirsten and Jackson, and maybe just start with a very, very basic question, which is, how are you doing? I know both of you are involved in teaching, as well as, at least in the past, Jackson, conducting. I don't know whether there are ensembles meeting right now that you are able to conduct, in fact. So maybe let's start with Kirsten. How are things at University of Houston, for example?
They're going well. It's a very different teaching environment right now. In my own studio, about 2/3 of my students are having lessons in person. So that's in an office that's large with an air purifier going next to me the whole time, and masked and distance, and all the protocols kind of in place. And approximately 1/3 of my students are online. So here in my home on Zoom or whatever other platform works for them. Some are still in their home countries. They went home over the summer to be with their families, international students and U.S. students too. So my teaching is continuing, just in a very different kind of format. But it's so wonderful to see everybody every week.
Well, I'm sure I can well imagine. And Jackson. I know you have a wife who's a cellist as well as two young children, so you've got a very full house, a busy house right now, and also trying to, I guess, do some teaching and other things from there. How is that working?
Yeah, so I have my 5-year-old who is going to kindergarten, as I was saying. I am going through kindergarten as well, again, different language, I guess. But and we have a 2-year-old Liam, who just wants to play all the time and have fun. And my wife has to work, and I have to do work from home. So it's challenging, but somehow we're making it work. And as far as teaching goes, I teach at a Lone Star College, and what we are doing, the college is doing a great job with rules and making sure that everybody is completely safe. So in that regard, everything feels okay. But I'm doing a combination of Zoom classes, and I see my students in person every 3 weeks, just quickly. And then I also conduct the chamber ensemble there, which I see every other week. And we only have 1 hour, so we don't use the space for a long time. We're not enclosed in one space for a long time. And then I also conduct an orchestra for the Houston Youth Symphony, which we haven't started yet conducting part. So we are doing a virtual content. The kids actually talked with Isaac Perman the other day, and it was great to have them talk to him. And we're hoping to start in person in November in a huge convention center. So there's lots of space, and all with masks, all distance, socially distanced. So I'm excited about that, to see the kids again and start making music lively and not just in the abstract,
Of course. Right. Well, we're all learning to be resilient and adaptive these days, musicians as well as everyone else. The concerts that are happening next week for the Shreveport Symphony are happening outside, for example, and then we're filming the next weekend a concert that's going to air on television in December, but we're doing that in a very, very large space. This is the kinds of things that we simply have to do until conditions are better and different. So let's start with a little discussion about the piece you're going to open the recital with, which is some music by Sergei Prokofiev. These are duos, or actually is it a single? Tell me about the music. Is it a multi-movement work, or are they separate pieces that he wrote? What are we going to hear?
Yes, it's a sonata for two violins, and there are four movements involved. We're only playing the first two. It kind of goes through a typical slow fast format. And Prokofiev actually wrote this when he was on vacation. One of those things that we aren't doing very much right now, but on vacation in Saint-Tropez. He had lived in Paris for about 10 years at this point, and he wrote most of it. Wrote it in 1932. Most of it while he was on vacation, and he wrote it. The funny thing is, he wrote it in response to hearing, as he put it, a very unsuccessful piece for two violins. He didn't name what it was, but it was a very unsuccessful piece, and he decided he would try his hand at it and see if he could create something a little better. and this piece was born.
And so did the two of you, maybe it'll be apparent once we see the video, were you together in the same space when you recorded this, or how did you put this together?
We were together. We rehearsed, I want to say once, and then we recorded it together. So you'll see the mask and you'll see everything there, unfortunately. But we did record it together. It was a great experience. I find it more difficult to do it this way than in person somehow. I like the idea of going to the stage and play through and have that adrenaline running, and then, having the people's reaction. Recording is, to me, more difficult, I feel like, because you have so many times and there's more expectations to it. But I think it was fun to do it. It's great to make music under these circumstances, and it's a great piece. I personally hadn't played it before, and I find it very, very interesting. The first movement is, I want to say that the two movements have a lot of emotions going on. There's violence in the second movement. There's lyricism in the first movement. There's kind of like this chasing around between the two violins. There is moments of sadness, the dissonance, that characteristic dissonance of Prokofiev's are there for sure. And so they're both beautiful moments. And the fact that he wrote it like in the sonata de chiesa kind of structure, with the slow movement first, fast movement, slow movement, it makes it a very nice piece.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we will transition now, I think, to listening to this performance. The first two movements, correct? First two movements of the sonata for two violins by Prokofiev with Kirsten Yon and Jackson Guillén. All right, two very contrasting movements from Sergei Prokofiev, his sonata for two violins. We just heard Kirsten Yon and Jackson Guillén playing that those two movements. It's amazing to hear how much sense of harmony and so on he is able to create out of two instruments that are essentially playing in the same register, and they're both melodic instruments rather than chordal instruments like let's say a piano or a guitar or something like this. Fun to play? Let me just ask that question.
Oh, yeah, I had a great time. I mean, I can't speak for Jackson, but it's wonderful. There's so much interplay between the parts. Sometimes it's the way he it's like he's throwing the rhythmic gestures back and forth between the two instruments so much of the time, and you catch it, you toss it back. Like there's something so athletic about that second movement, and the first movement is just so lyrically stunning. The way he voices the extremes of both instruments to create this just stunning composite.
It's interesting to see the way he uses both instruments, because there's always a conversation all the time. There's always interaction. It never feels like one is accompanying the other one. Instead, it feels like one is talking and the other one is also talking at the same time and making the argument. If you feel it like in musical narrative, there's always this kind of conflict sometimes that is going on. And in the first movement, I see that it resolves all the time. It resolves the conflict with this beautiful C at the end that both violins get
right.
to.
Right. So sometimes when people are talking over each other, it doesn't work so well. Other times, I guess they can end up complementing one another in the end somehow. Yeah. It's interesting, the idea of melodic lines happening simultaneously is what we would call polyphony. And it's something that certainly the music of the Baroque and J.S. Bach in particular is right, for which he is rightly renowned. And it's interesting, in the solo sonatas and partitas for violin, he is able to very often create a sense of polyphony, even though he doesn't even have two violins. He only has one violin in order to create that kind of texture. So what we're going to hear next actually are three movements from one of the three partitas that Bach wrote for solo violin. He wrote them relatively early in his life. Relatively, I think he was about 35 or so probably when they were written. Do we know why he wrote these pieces?
He was well. There's a lot of mystery around the specific origins. They think he might have written it for another violinist, Pisendel. There's a little discussion about, because he wrote 6 sonatas and partitas for violin, the 6 cello suites, and also the lute suites as well. And there's some discussion about which came first, but popular thinking is that the violin sonatas arrived on the scene first, because he was a violinist. He was concertmaster in Weimar for a while before he wrote these. These were completed in 1720 when he was Kapellmeister in Köthen, but he was still playing a fair amount of violin. And there's a history of works for solo violin preceding this. The Telemann, and the Bieber are probably the most commonly known, and this was his contribution.
And so tell us about the three movements in particular that you've chosen to play. An Allemande, if I'm not mistaken, and then usually we'd have the courant next, but you've switched the sarabande and the courant, I think, just to end with maybe a livelier movement.
Yes, exactly. I went against Bach's wishes. At the end of the Allemande, usually it's Allemande, courant, and then the sarabande, and then followed by a jig. But given sort of time constraints and everything else, I thought it would be a little nicer to order them a little, kind of a processional. The Allemande is a processional dance, an introductory dance, and then have something that was a little more calm, the sarabande, followed by the courant, which is a running movement that's full of joy and motion and very fleet-footed.
All right. Well, let's listen to those three movements, and three movements from the partita number 2 in D minor of Bach, the Allemande, the sarabande next, and then the courant with Kirsten Yon, violinist.
Hello, welcome to my virtual recital. This is the first online recital offering I have ever played in my life, and the situation seems to just call for music at this time, in whatever form, whatever medium, with whatever connectivity we can find within ourselves to share with others. So I hope you enjoy this musical offering on behalf of the Shreveport Symphony with several of my dear friends, both near and far, given the circumstances. And I will begin with a little bit of Bach.
So we've heard three movements from the second partita for solo violin by Johann Sebastian Bach with Kirsten Yon, SSO Concertmaster, as the performer. You had a couple different cameras going on there in your home, it looked like, didn't you?
I did, yes, yeah. I set up two, and I think Kermit, with doing the editing, was able to do even a little more zooming in and close up, and some really wonderful things.
Nice.
It's such an interesting thing to record at home. The things you have to think about that you wouldn't need to consider in a professional setting. Like at one point, I had to stop playing because I was recording. I live in a townhouse, and I was recording on the second floor, and I have lots of trees outside of the room where I was recording. And the birds got so loud all of a sudden, I actually had to just wait for them to calm down and sort of get all the excitement out of their system before I could continue. It was really funny.
Well, I mean, I think we're all learning about the kinds of, I mean, meetings are interrupted by dishwashers and all kinds of things going on in people's lives these days. So why not music as well? I suppose it only makes sense. But it was beautiful how you were able to do that, and I'm sure with teaching from home that you've had to kind of upgrade whatever technology you may have had in your life prior to the pandemic to allow that to happen.
Yeah, quite dramatically. My poor 8 or 9-year-old Surface Pro that I carried with me everywhere all of a sudden couldn't hold up to Zoom teaching. It would start to overheat and like get really flustered, and so like so many other people, I went on the technological search, last March when we were first starting to deal with this, and upgraded my ability to communicate across the online platform.
Indeed. Well, we are going to close this recital with some music by Johann Svensson, a Norwegian composer. This is his Romance for solo violin. It's a piece that I can't remember whether it was first written for violin and orchestra. I know there is a version for violin and orchestra.
Yeah. I think it was originally for violin and orchestra.
I see. Mm-hmm. But it's often done in this version as well for piano and violin. Now, here's the thing. Kirsten lives in Houston. I live in Shreveport, and we decided that we would present this piece virtually, remotely. But of course, you probably know that you cannot simultaneously on something like Zoom, for example, or Skype, play music. There's enough of a lag that it's not possible to do. So Kirsten recorded her part by herself and then sent that to me. And I did my best to listen to what she had done. There's a lot of expressive pushing and pulling of the tempos, rubato, we call it. And I had to kind of, I listened to it enough that I kind of got a sense of how she was playing these various phrases. And then I played it through some Bluetooth, actually just one Bluetooth earpiece in my left ear, so you wouldn't even see that from the camera angle that I use. But I also had her video image on my iPhone that I could watch while this was happening, because it was very helpful to be able to actually watch the bow and anticipate when she was going to make a bow change, for example. We take for granted how much we, of course, listen to each other, but especially how much we look at each other when we're playing music to make it happen together. So I haven't seen the results of this. I don't think you have either.
No. This will be the first time.
Kermit put this together for us, and I hope that I was able to catch a number of those interesting places where you're pushing or pulling the tempo. I'll say one more thing. If you're watching on either YouTube or Facebook, there are places where you can make comments. You can also put in questions if you have any, and those will be relayed to us. And if you have any at all, we can try to answer those when we come back from this. But anything else you want to add, Kirsten, about the Svensson?
No, just that it's such a beautiful, heartfelt, romantic piece. It's really become one of my favorites to play. And we had a slight advantage. Michael and I were able to play this last year for a very small concert in Shreveport. So we'd already kind of experienced it once, which certainly made it. As I was playing, I know I was hearing your accompaniment and the melodic line when I was accompanimental at the same time. And as well trying to imagine an audience. It was so nice to have played this with you once already, because I was able to imagine the audience that we last performed it for at the Oaks, and that was just a very helpful mental picture to imagine connecting through that medium again.
Yes, I agree. All right, so here we have it then, the Romance for Violin and Piano by Johann Svensson with Kirsten Yon, violinist. We've heard the Romance for violin and piano by Johann Svensson with Kirsten Yon, Shreveport Symphony Concertmaster. And that was the first time that she and I have heard that piece. Well, that performance of that piece. We each obviously contributed our parts to it, but we had not heard the combined result until just now. I mean, I think it worked pretty well. There were a couple of moments where I couldn't quite, catch you, or just maybe I over-anticipated or something. But anyway, it's a strange way to make music. I think we will both agree. But glad that we can do it because it allows us to share beautiful music like that.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a time when a time that calls for creation and beauty in whatever form we can present it to the world. And the intent is certainly sincere, I think, from both of us and on all the pieces and anything that you find online with kind of these online musical offerings. It's a very strange time to be an artist right now.
It's time to be a human being, I think.
And that as well, yes, yeah. So any way we can share the music that's in our souls is satisfying, regardless, I find, for me.
Beautifully said. Yes, I would completely agree. So to that end, I would remind our viewers and listeners that they can hear some additional music from actually a larger group representing the Shreveport Symphony. We have on Saturday, next Saturday, let's see, I should do my math. That'd be the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. Help me out, is that right? Yes. At 4 p.m. in Betty, Virginia Park, a family concert that's going to feature the strings of our orchestra, along with wonderful young violinist Calvin Alexander, who's going to play Vitaly Chacon with us, and some musicians from the Centenary Suzuki program are going to play the first movement of the Bach A minor concerto with us. So that'll be a lot of fun, and bring your masks and I guess maybe lawn chairs or blankets and join us in Betty, Virginia next Saturday afternoon. Then the next day, that would be the 25th, right? Sunday, a week from today, also 4 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. We have a program, the first in our series of Knoll Foundation Chamber Music programs, that's going to feature the Grand Partita of Mozart. This is a magnificent work that if you saw the film or the play Amadeus, you heard a little bit of it. It's referred to in very reverential terms in that movie and play for good reason. It's a beautiful work that is substantial. I mean, it's I guess it's actually longer than Mozart's symphonies. And that will feature the winds of our orchestra, along with Kermit Poling, who will be conducting. You can also, by the way, hear a little bit more violin piano music if you're listening to Red River Radio. On Tuesday morning from about 10:40 to 11 a.m., Jennifer Carcillo, my wife, and I are going to be playing some things live from their studio. So there's another chance to hear some music representing the Shreveport Symphony. So we have a lot of stuff coming up. Kirsten, we're going to be looking for you're joining us next week, yes?
I am, yes. Hey. I will be there with mask and my own individual stand and and everything else.
Yes, we're all going to have our own sort of zones of social distance, I guess, in making this possible. But it's really going to be great to see everybody again and to be able to make music together again in this way and to share it with a live audience. That's, all of those things are things that we've been sorely missing for several months now. So we're happy to be able to look forward to that. So again, thank you so much, Kirsten, for putting this music together and for taking some time this afternoon to be with us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your collaboration, Michael. And it was so much fun to play with Jackson as well, who ironically had to leave because he has a rehearsal. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yes, a good thing to have, a problem to have, as it were.
So until next weekend.
All right, sounds very good. So thank you, Kirsten, thank you, Jackson, and thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Be well, and we'll look forward to seeing you next weekend. Take care.
Thank you all.